to the final session in the series of Taking the Lead 2020 Policing and Justice. I would like to thank all who have joined us for any of the sessions, whether it was one session or all. We appreciate your participation. My name is Edna Clinton, a resident of Ames, Iowa, and I am the president of the Ames NAACP branch. It is important to continue the momentum and find solutions to the issues that allow a George Floyd and so many similar tragedies to occur. We have opened the door for critical, courageous, and continuous conversations that lead to produce long-lasting, positive changes. Ames, Story County, where do we go from here? We must eliminate the fear injustices create and boldly step out to ensure that we are moving towards equity of treatment and outcomes for all. The NAACP advocates for smarter, results-based criminal justice policies to keep our communities safe, including treatment for addiction and mental health problems, judicial discretion in sentencing, and an end to racial disparities at all levels of our system. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the City of Ames for partnering with the Ames NAACP branch to make this important series available. We are pleased that the city has adopted goals essential to ensuring equitable policing and justice, those of valuing a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community, and of valuing communication and engaging with the public. As you listen tonight, I encourage you to pause and remember, nothing changes when we don't learn, grow, and share with humility and desire for justice. By the way, the entire Taking the Lead 2020 Policing and Justice series will be available on the Ames NAACP branch Facebook for your use. Now, we will hear from our moderator, Dan Culhane, CEO and President of the Ames Chamber of Commerce. Dan?
Ms. Edna, thank you, sir, very much for the introduction. Thank you for including me tonight. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be your moderator on behalf of my board of directors and nearly 700 members of the Ames Chamber of Commerce. We're really grateful for the partnership, the long partnership we've had as a chamber with the NAACP, certainly with the City of Ames and Iowa State University. So it's great to be here. I'll make a very brief remark here, and then I'm going to turn it over to our distinguished panelists. Ensuring public safety, whether in a city or on a campus, is one of a leader's fundamental obligations. Essential to fair and effective policing is expanding the range of viable alternatives to criminal law enforcement so that police have multiple tools from which to fashion effective responses to quite varied public safety problems. Local leadership plays a role in championing these initiatives. And I'm pleased that we have two of our most prominent leaders in our community, Mayor John Haila and President of Iowa State University, Dr. Wendy Wintersteen, with us tonight. And so they're going to provide a few opening comments, and then we'll get right into our questions. I've got a series of questions here that I'll be reciting to each of them for their respective answers. We are going to begin with Mayor John Haila. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Edna. We appreciate the opportunity to visit with you this evening. Just thought I'd share a little bit about myself and my background. First of all, I was born in Chicago and lived on both coasts, and went to high school in Southern California. My parents ended up moving to West Des Moines after I graduated from high school, which brought me to Central Iowa. And in 1972, a long time ago, I became a freshman in architecture at Iowa State. During that time, yeah, absolutely. Proud alumni. After graduating, met my wife on campus, and we ended up wanting to stay in the central Iowa area. We were involved with a faith community here in Ames. I ended up living next door in Boone, raised our family there, but we had our feet actually in both communities. Had a lot of friends over here, spent a lot of time over here. And in 1986, I started my own architecture and engineering firm. And in 2009, moved it to Campus Town. It was an intentional move into that area. And in 2011, my wife and I both moved over here to Ames, where we are just honored to be Ames residents. While I was in Campus Town, I had the privilege of serving as president of Campus Town Action Association. And through that, I became exposed to and interacted with the Ames City Council. And I was so impressed with their leadership and their vision for the community. They're being forward thinking, and the seed was planted to consider one time or in the future maybe to consider running for city council. And so through a series of events, and including being engaged as a president of the transit board, which further caused me to be engaged with Iowa State University through board members, as well as the city manager, city council member. I was very impressed with the overall process and ended up deciding to consider running for the position of mayor. I sold my company in 2016 and consulted for a couple of years, and now I'm retired, so to speak, but love serving Ames as its mayor. So I was elected in 2017. So I took the oath of office on January 1st of 2018, and it is indeed an honor and a privilege to serve as your mayor. And look forward to this evening. And I just want to thank the NAACP for taking the lead and sponsoring these 4 sessions. I personally have learned an immense amount from all 3 of the previous sessions. I'm looking forward to sharing, interacting with everybody this evening.
Thank you very much, Mayor. President Wintersteen, please.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone this evening with Dan Culhane, a great partner of Iowa State, certainly with Mayor Haila, who we work with so closely on a very regular basis, and with Edna, who provides extraordinary leadership for all of us, as well as with the NAACP. So my thanks to the NAACP. I will share that when I'm not working as president of Iowa State University, I am an entomologist. So I'm especially pleased to see what I believe are some butterflies on a print behind Edna's, behind Edna. So it's good. It's good to kind of see into everybody's homes occasionally, or into their offices in a different way than we normally do. I would also like to thank the panelists that have been in the previous events in this series. And really a very special thanks to 2 individuals at Iowa State University that have done so much, I believe, to support the climate that we want to have on campus and that we want to have in this community. And that's our Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, Reg Stewart. Reg is an individual that over the time that he's been at Iowa State has truly built partnerships across the community. He's brought the city and Iowa State closer together. So I'm very thankful for how the city has worked with us on many different issues. So deep thanks to Reg, and certainly he moderated 2 of the sessions, I believe. Maybe I'm close on that. And then I would also like to thanks, Edna. And then I would also like to thank our Chief of Police, Michael Newton, an individual that when he arrived here said that he too had a commitment to achieving the type of climate that we want to have for our students and for our community. And he's done extraordinary things. Again, a partnership that he's developed with the city of Ames and really across Story County as well. So I'm just so proud of those 2 individuals. When I was appointed as president, I said that I wanted Iowa State University to be a model for all land grants on how we could provide a welcoming and inclusive environment that we would truly welcome all of our students. And you know from the past year, our own events here at Iowa State University, that we have addressed struggles that our students have had. We continue to listen and to hear on how we can do a better job of achieving that goal that I set as president, and we're going to continue to work on it. It's going to take all of us every day working together to make a difference. So thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. It's good to sit at this table with these 3 individuals.
Thank you, President Wintersteen. That's so true, and I think that's what's unique about these panels and in these forums you've conducted, Edna, is that we weren't meeting one another for the first time. We've collaborated previously, and so when we get back together to do things like this, we're renewing friendships because we see each other all the time. And so that's the exciting thing I think we have. It's best for us as we move forward collectively here in Ames and Story County. We're going to jump right into our questions. Our first question will go to President Wintersteen, and that question is, what do you consider to be problem issues on campus related to policing and justice? What are you currently doing to address those issues?
Well, I began my opening comments by thanking Chief of Police Michael Newton for the work that he's done to really establish what we will call a community-centered approach to public safety. And truly under Chief Newton's leadership, we are emerging as a national model. When we have our national conference on race and ethnicity at Iowa State, the Iowa State Conference on Race and Ethnicity, we invariably have police departments from all over the nation want to come and observe Chief Newton and his team and how they work on diversity and inclusion. Just recently, the chief was called by the police department at Harvard University to learn more about Chief Newton's leadership and the work of his team on the Iowa State campus. So we are working hard to tell that story locally. We're known nationally for the good work they do, but we need to do a better job of communicating about that. Most importantly, I think, is the work of our engagement and inclusion officers and what they do, and this very special program that we have. And this is a program that really revolves around building a culture of respect, a culture that is free of discrimination. And these officers involved in this program truly are being successful in this. This program includes a full-time mental health advocate, and all the officers are trained in bias incident response. Additionally, the ISU police have extended their annual bias training to all officers and to all members of the Department of Public Safety at Iowa State. I can give you lots of examples. The programs like Tailgate with the Cops or the T-shirt giveaways that our police officers do, they help to reduce the stigma that's oftentimes associated with law enforcement. And that makes a difference, right? To see the ISU police in a different light, to know them as individuals truly makes a difference. It's also important to note that the ISU Police Department supports many student services, and those include the ISU Guardian app, so you can get on your phone and call in and say, I'm walking home from the library back to where I live, or to the bus stop, or to a residence hall, and the Guardian app can be with you as you walk home. Feeling safe is an important part of what we have to do at Iowa State and in our community to make everyone feel safe. In addition, the police support our Safe Ride. They offer self-defense courses and training. And of course, they lead our sexual assault response team, which involves 15 nurses. And this is not just an ISU program. This is an Ames program. This is a Story County program. So the sexual assault response team is about all of us working together. They've also done programs like Change the Message, Change the Culture, which is focused on social justice and again on sexual assault victims to bring more awareness to other activities that the Iowa State Police does outside of policing. So they're going to continue to do this work, and I think to make a tremendous amount of difference in the lives of our students and in our community. And of course, they do this work always in partnership and collaboration with their partners in the Ames Police Department and in other policing departments in the county. And then I would just add one more pride point, and that is our engagement and inclusive officers teams work was recognized with the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators Innovation and Community Policing Award. Now that's a mouthful, but what I hope you heard there was it was an award from the International Association for Innovation and Community Policing Award. So we have great leadership. We have great members of the police department. They work closely across campus, and we're going to do a better job of getting the message out about their work.
Thank you, Wendy. Mayor, would you like the question repeated?
Oh, I think I have it, Dan. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll say that one of the biggest things that the police department is really needs to focus on, and that is a city issue, and that is to build trust, relationships, and communication with the community. This is an ongoing issue and remains a focus of our police department. Secondly is to even make stronger our community policing. And I will say this, that our Ames Police Department is committed to that, and they do desire to find the best way to help those in need by using local resources as well as local agencies. So with City Council's knowledge and our full support, the Ames Police Department will continue to develop those relationships, build trust, and foster communication with the community members. I just want to share a few examples of the ways that we're doing that right now. And I know there's going to be additional ways going forward. The first is our safe neighborhood teams. This is comprised of 4 officers. They'll attend block parties. They'll interact with residents while they're on patrol. They'll interact through emails, phone calls, with the vision of better understanding what's going on in the different neighborhoods around the community, to make them safer, but also to build those relationships and also to build that trust. Secondly is we now have 2 school resource officers in Ames. We had one for a number of years, and that was so successful that in combination with the Ames Community School District, police department approached council about adding a second one. And so we now have one full-time at the high school and one that's at the middle school. And I believe they share sometimes also going over to elementary. What's some of the goals? Is building trust, communication, relationships directly with the students and directly with families, with the goal of being proactive and preventative versus actually having to deal with issues down the road. We also have community safety resource officers. They're college students that are hired to assist in nonviolent traffic control duties. You may see them out there on a football game where they're helping to direct traffic. It helps build student understanding with the police department, and actually helps create some ownership and a stake in the Ames Police Department's mission. We also, as Dr. Wintersteen referred to, close communication with the ISU Dean of Students, ISU Police, and I believe to some extent also with the ISU Vice President of Diversity and Inclusivity. We also have campus town safety walks. It may sound like something which is fairly small, but it's a way to make our neighborhoods safer by examining the built environment. Maybe we can improve lighting in certain areas through maybe some landscaping is blocking visibility, but the whole idea again is being proactive. And this last example I want to share is that we really want to divert people from police contact into more appropriate services. And I'll probably share more about this later on during this hour. But we have a mental health advocate like Iowa State has a mental health advocate. And we have established multidisciplinary cooperation in response to homelessness, addiction, sexual assault, youth development, and other issues. But the whole goal is we want to keep them out of the justice system. We want to get them help early on, and that mental health advocate has been invaluable in doing this undertaking.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't rest there. You're up for the next question right away. Our second question is, what policies and procedures do you promote and enforce to ensure that students or residents have interactions with the police and city or campus justice processes that ensure equitable outcomes? Further, what types of information do you use to develop those policies and procedures? Mayor, please.
Sure. Well, first of all, in previous sessions, in the first session, Chief Sykosh, and in the second session, Commander Huff shared the various types of training that the officers go through, either on an annual basis or more frequently, to address bias, implicit bias, and treating all residents in an equitable manner. So I'm not going to go back and review what they have, what they shared. Secondly, in the event that there is an issue that arises, the city is committed to receiving and responding to officer or departmental actions or complaints. I want to just share with you just the process that people can go through if they do have complaints or concerns. First of all, the police want to hear if there are issues. So the first thing that we encourage people to do is to report to shift supervisor, and if they don't get adequate response, then addressing the police chief. It's understood that that may not be very comfortable to be doing that. And I will share with you that based on some conversations with some individuals, we are starting to explore how can we use technology that an issue can be reported by using technology or an app. We have an app called Ames on the Go, and I have asked staff to start looking into, can that be expanded to allow someone to submit a complaint or a concern on terms of an interaction with somebody in law enforcement. We do have a city manager form of government, and actually the city manager hires the police chief, and then indirectly the police officers are underneath that. The city manager can be appealed to, as well as after that, if there's not adequate response, then to the mayor or the city council. Additionally, if there is a bias or discrimination complaint, Ames does have a human relations commission that will receive those complaints. If it's a civil rights violation, we do refer that to experienced, trained individuals at the state level and at the Civil Rights Commission. And we also have a state ombudsman who can be appealed to in certain situations as well. So there's multiple ways to deal with it, but the bottom line is we want to be transparent. We want to be dealing with issues, and the best way to do it is to make those known so we can deal with them and make people feel welcome and also treated equitably. And third, there are multiple feedback loops that the police department uses to assess their own operations and actions. So, for example, the Story County will review the Story County attorney will review cases and offer feedback. There's feedback from the city manager's office and also our city attorney. The department has annual performance measure reviews for officers and staff. They also review body camera footage to make sure that things are being done appropriately. And another option is for people, we send out every year an annual City of Ames resident survey. And in that, you can offer input and feedback on anything relative to what's going on in the city, including law enforcement and fire department. And so we look to that to also get feedback in terms of how are we doing. So we're endeavoring to ensure that we can understand what's going on and make improvements where necessary. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We are not perfect. We have room for improvement. There are things that need to be dealt with. But the only way to do that is to understand what's going on. And I'm pleased to say that conversation, because of these sessions, that conversation is beginning, and we're getting more feedback. And I will say that the police department is taking it very seriously. The city manager is taking it seriously. We're taking it seriously as council. And we're endeavoring to address those, become more aware of them, and move forward.
Thank you, Mayor Haila. I appreciate that comment about we're always working to get better. You know, there's always work to do. That's for certain. No doubt about it. President Wintersteen, you're up.
Thank you, Dan, and I'll just echo the mayor's comment as well. You really have to have a focus on every day working to get better, every day listening to what students, faculty, and staff, the community has to share with you, what has been their experience. So active listening, listening deeply to the feedback that we receive, that really is the right path to the future, because that informs the actions that are needed. In terms of Iowa State University and our work relative to this question, Dan, I would begin by saying that our police department first actively engages with our Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion's office to be offering seminars, presentations, to be engaged again in a different light than in policing, but to be engaged in the classroom, in student gatherings, where they are having these types of conversations. And for us at Iowa State, again, I think this has made a difference. I'll give you one example. In the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion's office, there are what we call campus conversations. And a while back, one of the conversations that was held was called Big or Small, Do You Call? And this was really a review of racial bias during police interactions and responding to some of the calls that come in that are not relevant or accurate to the action being described to the police department. And to be able to have a conversation with students, to have the police in the room having a conversation with students about this, that's a way that we can let students share terribly unfortunate experiences they may have had, but also for other students to learn what the situation is. So this interaction of being in the classroom, being in different types of gatherings with our students, with our Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion's office staff, that really makes a difference. So it's a very formal partnership that exists there. In addition, the Iowa State Police Department has a student advisory board, and it's important that that there's that opportunity for students to sit, to be able to provide advice to the police department, to be able to ask questions about actions, to be able to help review policies and procedures. That really starts to build a different type of trusting relationship where students actually have a voice in how those different policies are being implemented. So that work is underway, has been underway, and that type of opportunity for input and advice to the police department by our students is going to continue. And again, that's how change occurs. The police department has a written set of policies that are up on their webpage, links to those policies that are available for individuals to look at. And they really have a very strong set of expectation for all members of the department as it relates to non-biased policing and requirements that everyone is expected to adhere to.
Thank you, President Wintersteen. We'll stay with you and we'll go to our next question, which is, what is your process for determining whether there are unintended negative consequences as it relates to existing policies and procedures?
Well, again, I think I'll pick up where I left off there, Dan, and that is to say that you have to give students, faculty and staff, community members a voice. They have to be able to be at the table, to share their experiences, how they've experienced policing at Iowa State University or in the community. They have to be able to share those experiences, and they also have to be able to give advice, to question certain policies, and to be at the table for an authentic discussion about what the situation is. This type of feedback is really how we can avoid unintended negative consequences by hearing that feedback. So we're going to continue to do that with the Student Advisory Board. We're going to continue to do that in other types of venues where individuals have the opportunity, again, to share their experiences and provide feedback on policies and procedures.
Thank you. And would you say that this isn't something new? This is something that the campus police department's been doing for an extended period of time. Is that true? That's
correct. Ever since Chief Newton arrived, he has been involved with this, had that student advisory board in place, but there's a heightened need and awareness of that now under the circumstances that we're dealing with. We are having the most forthright conversation about racial inequity that we've had for 60 years. And so this is the opportunity to truly make a difference. And those were some of Edna's opening comments.
Without question. Thank you, Wendy. Mayor Haila.
Well, I'm going to continue on with that same theme that Dr. Wintersteen opened with, and that is feedback. Feedback is critical, and it's going to be from people outside of the city hall, outside the police station, back to either council or the police department, but also internal feedback, and that is monitoring the impact that policies may have through looking at staff reports, analysis of situations that they develop. And there's times where they're brought to the council for our attention. I wanted to share one really positive example of how something could have remained very negative, but turned out to have a really positive outcome for our community. And this kind of goes to one of the things that Edna mentioned too in her opening comments, and that has to do with mental health. A number of years ago, our officers were trained on how to respond to mental health crises. While we were willing participants in terms of getting training, actually mental health services really is not a local law enforcement issue, but it's really more of a state issue. But because our officers are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, an unintended consequence was a quadrupling of mental health calls over the course of a few years. And just to give you some perspective, last year, they responded to over 1,600 mental health calls. So uniformed officers responding to calls might end up escalating versus diffusing a situation. So council is made aware of this through some reports that they received from the police department. We found there's growing call volume through discussions, staff reports, and presentations, and we determined a creative solution was necessary. So with council support, the Ames Police Department, in concert with several other local partners, established a mobile crisis response team and the Crisis Stabilization and Transition Living Center. And both of these provide a level of intervention by trained and or credentialed mental health staff members instead of by a uniformed police officer. So officers are only called upon during life safety situation. And again, the whole idea is to de-escalate a situation, and someone arriving in a uniform may end up causing more of an issue. Now, on a positive note, we got a very encouraging email just today from a resident where we had officers that did respond to a mental health situation, and they did not even have a location. Through a variety of means, they were able to get into that area, and they report back, and we just love getting these positive reports. It was a mental health situation, and this is a situation where they had to go out, and they did a tremendous job of helping get care for this individual versus getting them into the justice system. And secondly, the position of a mental health advocate that I mentioned previously was created. Julie Saxton currently serves as our mental health advocate, and she serves as a conduit between crisis response and stabilization and the police department. This position is devoted to diverting individuals away from police contact and into community mental health services wherever possible. So our whole goal is not to get people into the judicial system, but to try and get them the help that they desperately need. And this is just one great example of the mobile crisis response team being able to go out and help people in needed situations.
And then, can I just add on to that, Dan, real quickly?
Please.
I just think all of us need to be aware of the growing needs in mental health. That's an understatement. Mayor Haila's comments are very appropriate for tonight's conversation, because we know that the COVID-19 is creating more stress and anxiety. We are very concerned as we continue on through the pandemic, what the impact is on individuals' mental health. And certainly at Iowa State University, the good work of our Teelan Health Center, but also what we're able to do now with apps. It's hard to believe for an older person like myself, who would never think I would get mental health support via an app. You know, that is the reality now, that you can get on something like Cognito, or you can go to different texting services that can help you. Again, that's not how I would think about getting assistance, but there's a lot of different ways out there we can provide that help. But I just hope we can all remember during this terrible pandemic that we're seeing a rise in mental health concerns.
I would agree with Dr. Wintersteen 100%, and it's enough of a concern not only with college students or adults, but it's also a big issue with K-12.
Yeah.
And to that end, I formed a mayor's youth mental health task force that began to meet early this year, and COVID-19 unfortunately has put that on hold. But the point is, we have to get our arms wrapped around this, and that's where we want to help people where they're at and avoid any interaction, if we can, with law enforcement. And with so many calls coming in that could transition into a engagement with law enforcement, this is the best way to do it proactively. And so that is a high priority of mine. I know it's of Dr. Wintersteen's. I know it's of this community. People are concerned about it. And so when we get our arms wrapped around this better, we're going to start seeing it. And it's a partnership with Iowa State Law Enforcement, Ames Police Department, YSS, Mary Goody Medical Center, McFarland Clinic, the Ames School District, United Way. There's a whole group of people that started meeting together. And we're going to hear more about it as a community, but we just want to diffuse it and help people where they're at.
Well said by both of you. You know, it's really incredible, and it's important, and I'm grateful that mental health and the funding of mental health, that's a whole other forum sometime, another time. But the fact that we're talking about mental health the way we are, it's so much more accepted than it's ever been, is really, really great. It's really important because it impacts so many people, and so it's terrific the way the police department and the city and the university are intervening in situations where, as you say, Mara, you're not sending a uniformed officer to escalate the situation. That's terrific leadership on the part of our police department and our Department of Public Safety.
And just so we're clear, Dan, because the police are available at all hours, all days of the year, they may end up showing up if there's no one available for some reason, or the call occurs and it turns into actually mental health. But they try and do assessments early on, and if they can mobilize the mobile crisis team, that's a preferred way, because they can come in and try and help. And that's just one aspect of community policing, which we're committed to, have been committed to, and it came out of what we thought could be an unintended consequence of situations that were developing.
Very good. Well said. Thank you. Mayor Haila, we'll stick with you. As a leader, what role do you play in ensuring that the community stays informed about policing and criminal justice processes and policies?
Well, this is a topic of discussion in general in terms of communication at our council annual retreat in January. And council adopted a goal this year to improve the communication with constituents, which is reaching out in different ways. We understand that there are those who are underrepresented. They may not be able to get to a council meeting. They may not be interested in emailing, but going out to engage with people. Again, COVID kind of put a huge hold on that in terms of trying to do some new initiatives. We're also looking for ways for enhancing technological ways of communication. And so that's one way of just reaching out and being proactive. Secondly, the police department has a robust social media platform. They have a website, Facebook posts. From a point of transparency, people that may be aware but may not be aware, but police recently posted their entire policy manual online. It's lengthy, but that is there for transparent review. All of our city business meetings are broadcast live through multiple media platforms. The public has access to information and records. And one of the concerns that we have, though, is are they going to get information overload? We have the city side, which goes into the utility bill. We have our Facebook, Twitter, webpage, press releases, videos. The question is, are people reading them and getting the information? And it's just interesting to talk to people from different generations. Some may want to read it in a newspaper. Some may want it on Instagram. Some might want it on Facebook. And so the point is that in this time of having information, different conduits and channels, we really want to make sure that we can get the information out to the community. The bottom line is we're committed to and believe in transparency and accountability. Again, there's always room to improve. We're looking for suggestions from people on how can we better reach and interact with them. But I've said this to many people, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your business place, whether it's in city government, wherever it's at, communication is key. And it's always a challenge, and we're always looking for ways to make sure people understand what's going on from all walks of life and in all ways that they're receiving that.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Wintersteen.
Thanks, Dan. Well, as president, one of my responsibilities in working with the Iowa State Police Department is to be part of important conversations when change is occurring. As you probably all know, the police department reports to our senior vice president for operations and finance, Pam Kane. But in these critical times, I'm involved as well. And recently, I reviewed and approved the Iowa State's Police Department's response to 8 Can't Wait. And that is now posted on the department's website. I think many are aware that 8 Can't Wait was established by Campaign Zero, which was came together after the terrible situations in Ferguson and the protests there. And that campaign says that if these 8 actions are adopted, that it will reduce police violence by 72%. So our police department took this action very seriously, and you can go to their webpage and see examples of the 8 Can't Wait, but they include things like required de-escalation. The mayor already referred to how we do that in different ways, requiring a warning before shooting, require the exhausting of all alternatives before shooting, that there's a duty to intervene. All employees have a duty to intervene or request assistance if they witness another employee engaging in an activity they believe to be a violation of civil rights or unjustified. You know, how important that statement is, just given the tragic killing of George Floyd. So you can see, and you can go and see all of the 8 Can't Wait at the ISU Police Department. But that's an example. As president, I thought it was critically important that I review and improve this policy and response to that call for the police department to respond to that. In addition, I mentioned earlier that we have directives, the police department directives, up on the police department webpage. They will be posting more of those as we go forward. So those are also available for individuals to look at. I keep talking about the importance of the police being involved in educational programs with our students. We are an educational institution, so I deeply believe in that work. But one example is a program they do called Know Your Rights. And they do this again in the collaboration with the Office of the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion. And these are workshops to educate our community on campus about their rights. And as an example, what would be covered there, what legally constitutes harassment, and what would be the resources available to individuals that are experiencing harassment, and how the police can be supportive in that situation, again, from a legal standpoint. And then I would just add, during this COVID time, I believe I meet with the chief of our police department every day now. He also is the associate vice president under Pam Kane's leadership for all risk management at the university. And so we meet regularly. And in these times, there's no line that separates out one issue from another in these conversations. So I'm very engaged with what happens in the Iowa State Police Department.
Thank you, Wendy. Of course, since the theme here, we're going to stick with you as we put our next question. Dr. Wintersteen, how are you using your authority and influence to persuade or compel others to utilize creative problem solving to address the underlying conditions that may be causing or contributing to specific crime and or disorder problems?
Well, again, we have a police department at Iowa State that is engaged across the campus. Again, we've talked a lot about our Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, Reg Stewart, but there's also engagement with the provost, with student affairs, with the leadership within those divisions across the university. And so it really is about working together to think about what the creative or innovative solution is at any given time. And so we feel pretty good about the actions that they take and that they do together.
Thank you, Wendy. Mayor Haila?
Well, you start talking about creative problem solving, that's kind of getting into my wheelhouse. I just absolutely think that we want to look for ways to think outside the box. And I'm just going to share just quickly 3 examples that I think illustrate the way that we're trying to do things outside the box or thinking differently. And one is going to seem a little maybe minor in nature, but I'm going to continue on this theme of trying to make sure we minimize engagement of law enforcement with individuals to try and make sure that we're not getting people in the justice system don't need to. I learned recently that the police department was getting an increased number of calls from people who were saying that their neighbors next door were making an awful lot of noise and could they come over and deal with the situation. And so finally got to the point where they started asking the question, well, have you talked to your neighbors about that? And when they said no, then there was an encouragement to try and talk to their neighbors. Point being is, instead of having a uniformed officer arriving at a doorstep of someone that might potentially escalate a situation, is trying to encourage people to engage themselves and to be communicating. 2 is the mobile response crisis team. We get calls sometimes from people saying, will you go over and check on so-and-so? We're concerned about him. Again, we try and divert those calls from sending uniformed police officers to perform those checks, and we'll send the mobile crisis response team. Again, not to have a uniformed officer arrive, but instead a mental health team, because there may be a need there that we need to address. And then also another issue is homelessness in our community. And one of the things with the onset of COVID was the fact that we have with the Emergency Residence Project, which has now been renamed called The Bridge. City Council helps through asset fund over 30 different human service agencies. In fact, this year, the city of Ames will be investing over $1.5 million in local human service agencies. And when you add that to Story County, United Way, Story County, ISU student government, there's over $4.45 million going into these agencies to help meet the needs of the people in the community. Well, ERP had to shut their facility down in mid-March, and they needed to put them in hotels. Well, they ran out of money quickly, and they came to council. So council allowed them, one, to adjust their budget, to reallocate funds from one use to another use, and then we provided an additional $22,600 to help provide for the needs of those individuals. So how does that relate to the police department? Well, the police department frequently gets questions or gets calls on homeless, and they want to contact the Emergency Residence Project and help find temporary housing for them. Well, the staff was no longer in the office. They were calling in to try and get their messages. And so working together, one of our officers was working out the details. We got cell phones, work-only cell phones for the staff, so that the police department could have contact with the residence project staff, quicker. Just ways to try and help provide the needs for our residents and deal with issues quickly and creatively, versus trying to go ahead and utilize uniform officers on a lot of these calls.
And then I just need to add too that, this issue of homelessness, food insecurity, these again are issues that have grown dramatically during COVID-19. Right now, the food pantry at Iowa State University, even with donations and support, I think we're spending $3,200 a week just for students coming into the food pantry at Iowa State. And then you think about that community-wide, all the great work that historically has gone on in food security in Ames, but is made so much more difficult by the COVID. And that really is a very serious underlying condition that can oftentimes create problems for these individuals that puts them in conflict with the legal system.
That's a great plug for our food banks and food shelves across Story County. I was shocked to find out when I served on the United Way of Story County Board of Directors, the number of food banks in Story County, and they always need resources. And so if this is an opportunity to make an all call for more resources for those food banks and the United Way of Story County, let it be that. Wendy, would you like to add anything to the question that was posed about? Excuse me. I think I'm up for another question. I lost my place, didn't I? Pardon me. We'll jump to got all wrapped up there. We'll jump to our next question. As it relates to consequences for student or resident misconduct, do you encourage use of any creative justice options? Do you recommend that individuals participate in drug, mental health, or restorative justice programs, for example? If so, please provide a few examples. And we've kind of talked about this, but I'll let you jump in.
Well, from a city standpoint, the answer is absolutely. And I'm glad you asked for some examples. Actually, this was brought up, I think, by both Chief Sykosh, Commander Huff, and also by Story County Attorney Tim Meals. And I'm excited, very excited about this drug diversion project. The former Story County Attorney, Jessica Reynolds, and her staff put in a grant application for federal money to stop arresting people with substance abuse problems and start guiding them through treatment options. And they explained how this is going to be being operated in previous sessions. But the whole idea is just to avert nonviolent offenders with drug addiction from getting into the criminal justice system to begin with. And there's going to be a representative from each law enforcement agency in Story County, including the Ames Police Department, who'll be a member of this drug diversion team. But the whole goal, again, is help get people help early on versus trying to get into the judicial system. Secondly, I touched on noise complaints, but we are actually, our police department will work with landlords and property managers and ask them to address noise complaints versus sending in officers to deal with them, again, to try and minimize situations, especially if you have students who may be enjoying adult beverages. And you have And again, the mental health advocate in the Ames Police Department on staff. We have a long-term commitment to guiding people towards mental health services through the advocate, and we're essentially using that more and more. And I know from direct experience that there's a tremendous asset to our community to have people come in and work with situation so we can avoid getting these into the law enforcement community.
Thank you, Mayor. Wendy.
Sure. Well, I begin by just sharing we have a new dean of students, Sharon Evans, that joined us back in mid-June. She's just absolutely delightful and so talented and is doing a great job in her new role. And then just this week, we announced the hire of our new senior VP for Student Affairs, Toya Younger. These two individuals are going to do a great job for all of our students at Iowa State. So just a plug out there for everybody to get to know them. Sharon's in town and Toya will be here. She'll be starting at Iowa State on the first day of school, August 17th. So we're just so thrilled about that. Sharon Evans would say that the student conduct process at Iowa State does not intend to be prescriptive or overtly punitive. It accounts for each student's personal circumstances and engages students in conversations about their overall well-being and about the student experience. It's really supposed to be about an educational and restorative process, and oftentimes it's based in health promotion, because that is oftentimes the basis of some of the issues. Frequent outcomes for students involved in alcohol or drug cases involve recommended screening or assessment to help identify more significant issues, or opting in to participation in a diversion program, which encourages students to develop a personal risk management plan based on individualized comprehensive assessment. The student conduct process consults and makes regularly referrals to student assistance, the Teelan Health Center, student counseling, our academic success center, the student accessibility services, as many other on and off campus services, and really focused on what is the student need. It can also be a voluntary resolution agreement with the student that can better identify and address specific issues and concerns, again, while accounting for individual community risk factors. And the contact process can also take into account mental health concerns that we've already addressed, how that is a growing need in our community, and it certainly is at Iowa State University. So we have a dean of students office, a dean of students that care deeply about our students and want to help them get to their full potential to achieve the goals that they want to achieve while they're here at Iowa State.
Thank you, Wendy. Well, that almost wraps up our time together this evening. It's not time for final remarks, as we're at 6:58. We're a minute or two off schedule, so I'll take responsibility for that. President Wintersteen, would you like to conclude with some final remarks?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity for this conversation this evening, and I look forward to future conversations that will help both Iowa State University and our community move forward to address issues of racial inequality, to help us have a welcoming and inclusive environment at Iowa State and throughout the Ames community.
Thank you. Mayor Haila.
Well, I just want to first of all thank Dr. Wintersteen for being on with this panel. I just want the community to know how much we value her partnership, and I mean that sincerely. It's just not a token word that we're throwing around. Through this whole COVID-19 situation, and even prior to that, the lines of communication are wide open. There's a commitment to our community. We don't see ourselves as being divorced or being separate in terms of Iowa State and then the city of Ames. We are one community. All the students are part of our community, and we value all of them. And under her leadership and all the others that are in the department heads, I just want to thank her because it starts with a commitment at the top. And I just think that Ames should be aware of the fact that sometimes we don't make that known as much as we possibly should, but it's going on. And I just want to thank again the NAACP for taking a lead and making this initiative for these 4 sessions. And I want to just close with this, and I've shared this in my opening remarks, but I think it bears repeating, and that is, we as Ames residents have to be engaged in conversations like we're having tonight. We have to be talking about diversity, equity, inclusivity, the issue of race. It's our community is not perfect, but change starts with each one of us. It's not an institution. It's just not one group of people. It's all of us. So I'm asking every person to identify what changes each of us need to make. I have changes I need to make. I think we all need to look at that. Then we've got to work together as a community so that every person, regardless of their color, race, creed, sex, national origin, religion, ancestry, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status, feels welcome and is treated equally in the Ames community. To that end, I'm committed. I know that Dr. Wintersteen is from Iowa State, and I know you are, as we talked about it before too. I think our community is committed to that. We just need to put our shoulder to the plow and work positively, proactively together as a community. And I think if we can do that, we'll make positive change. And to that end, I know NAACP is committed to that and through this leadership. And I look forward to moving on. And as President Clinton indicated, we've just begun. We got work ahead of us, but we're committed to doing it.
Wonderful.
Well said, Mayor Haila. Thank you both very much for being our panelists tonight. What I love about these conversations is that we're not perfect. We continue to work towards getting better. It isn't like we check a box and say, well, we're done with that. Let's move on to something else. This is an ongoing conversation and dialogue, and we need to continue to find ways to make our community better for everyone, no matter where they're from or what their background might be. So well said by you both. I want to thank you both for being here tonight. Edna, thank you so much for the partnership the NAACP shares with all of us on this call this evening. I want to thank all the folks that were on with us live tonight. If you want to pass this along, you can find this later on. This was recorded on the City of Ames YouTube channel 12 or thecityofames.org. And I also know the NAACP will have this on their Facebook page and their website here in the coming days. With that, thank you also very much. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Good night.